Hello everyone, welcome to channel Qtomation. In last session we have seen about class name and tag name. So far we have seen all the standard locators. We have seen ID, we have seen name, link text, partial link text, class name and tag name. So these are all standard locators and they can be found directly inside our HTML code. So while seeing the example, we have seen that while finding these locators, we can directly find those in our HTML code. These are the standard locators which we have seen. In today's session, we will see about CSS selector, which is a custom locator. So like standard locators, CSS selector we cannot find directly in our HTML code. We have to write CSS selector by our own. So we will see in examples how to write CSS selectors. There are multiple combinations which we can use for CSS selector. First is tag and ID, tag and class, tag and attribute, tag, class and attribute. So these are the types or these are the combination which we can use for finding CSS selector locator. Now let's see practically one by one example. So what we will do, we will first see tag and ID, that is CSS selector by using tag and ID. So let's open one sample website. So I will just open. So this is one login page for which we will use CSS selector locator. So let's inspect this element and let's say my scenario is I want to pass username. So let's try to find out username field by using CSS selector, that is tag and ID, which is the first combination. So let's inspect this. So right click and inspect and let's see username field. So I am just hovering on username. So this is the HTML code for this username field. What is the tag name here? So what is the tag name here? So input is a tag name. And these are multiple attributes like class, placeholder, type, data-test, ID, name. These are all attributes. So first combination is we are going to see is tag name and ID. So how to use CSS selector by using tag and ID. So for that syntax is, for CSS selector we have to write syntaxically correct locator. So syntax is tag name hash value of ID. So if you are going to use tag and ID, the syntax for that CSS selector is we have to use tag name, after that hash and what is the value of the ID. So in this situation on this page, if you see this page, what is the tag name here? Input is a tag name. So if you want to write the CSS selector by using tag and ID here, how we will write it? So what is the tag name? Input is a tag name. After that we have to put hash, and after hash what we can do, we have to put the ID name. So what is the ID here? If you see, ID is user hyphen name. So this is the ID. So we have to just copy it. So the CSS selector will look like this. So input hash and after that username. So this is the CSS selector by using tag and ID. So that is the CSS selector by using tag and ID. So tag name. So tag name is input, hash value of ID. So username is the value of that ID. So now let's see in PyCharm. I am going to PyCharm. Let's create new Python file. So I am creating new Python file. Let's name it as CSS selector demo. So we are going to see CSS selector demo. So we have created the Python file. So I am just copying the code from our previous session. That code will remain same. So I am just copying it here. So this is the importing multiple. So we are importing WebDriver, we are also importing options, we are importing service, and we are importing by. So first we are creating here Chrome options. This part of code we are writing because after completion of the script, driver gets automatically closed. So if you don't want to close the driver, so now we are going to open the browser instance, open the website, and we are going to pass some value in username field. And after that, I don't want to close that browser instance. But if you don't use this, so in our case it was automatically getting closed. So if you add these two lines, so our browser instance will remain open even after the script completion. So only driver.close will close that automatically. We are creating the service class object where we are passing executable path, and that service object we are passing while creating the driver object. So we can name it as anything. So driver is equal to webdriver.chrome. So this is the object for Chrome instance of WebDriver. So for this we are creating the driver object, and by using this driver object we are opening this URL. So which in this case I am just going to open I am just going to open this website, saucedemo.com. So let's execute this file and let's see whether our page is getting launched or not. So we'll just run this file. So when we execute this file, it will launch browser, Chrome browser it will open. It will open this login page, right? So that is perfectly fine. So I'm just closing it now. So I'm just closing this instance. After that, first we will see CSS selector. By using tag and ID. So we are going to see a CSS selector by using tag and ID. So how we can find that? So we have to write one command like this: driver dot find element by dot CSS selector. So we have to select CSS selector. By dot CSS selector, comma, and after that we have to put the value. So first we are going to use tag and ID. So what is the syntax we have seen and what is the selector we have selected? That is, if you go to this page, so we have to first use tag name. So input is a tag name, after that hash, and what is the ID value is user hyphen name. So this is the ID value. So I am just copying it. So in double quotes we can write first tag name, after that hash, and ID, that is user hyphen name. So that is ID. So this is our CSS selector by using tag and ID. So after finding this username field, we want to pass some value. So I will just use send keys method and I am passing one value, let's say my user. So it should pass my user value to that field. Now let's execute it. So let's run this file. So it is opening the browser, opening the website, and it is passing the value of my user to this username field. That means that is the working fine. So CSS selector, this is how we can use by using tag and ID. Here one thing to note is, here we have used tag name, but tag name is optional also. So tag name is optional. So this statement we can write like this way as well. So I am just commenting this. So even if you don't write this tag name, input this is a tag name, it is optional. In all the CSS locators, with all the combination which we are going to see, all the combinations, tag and ID, tag and class, tag and attribute, tag class and attribute, for all these four scenarios, tag name can be optional also. So tag name is optional. So in this statement, if you simply use like this, so I am just writing the same line to find the username field like this. So instead of writing tag name, I can skip that also. So it is optional, but we have to mention hashtag, right? So hashtag is compulsory. So it will also locate the same CSS selector, that is username field. So this tag name can be optional. So I am just running this file now. It is launching the browser instance, and here also it is passing my user to username field. It means it is also detecting username field correctly. So tag name is optional. We can use by any approach. So we can use tag name, hash, and value of ID, and also we can skip the tag name and we can simply use hash and username, that is the value of ID. That is also perfectly fine. So we can use any one approach from this above. Our ultimate goal should be finding the locator correctly. This is about tag name and ID name. So I am just commenting this part. And now let's see next combination, that is CSS selector by using tag and class. By using tag and class. So let's see what is the syntax for tag and class for CSS selector. So we are again going to find the same field, that is username, but this time we will use tag name and class name. So for tag and ID we have seen. So what is the syntax for tag and ID? Tag name, hashtag, and after that value of ID. So if you see tag name, hashtag, value of ID. So in the example which we have just seen, what is the tag name here? Input is a tag name, and what is the ID? User hyphen name was ID. So we have used like this: driver.find element by .css selector, after that comma, in double quotes we can write tag name, hash, and value of ID, and then we are passing our value, that is my user. And input tag is optional. So if you don't write tag here, and we can simply write like this also. So this is also right. Now next example is CSS selector by using tag and class. Tag and class. Now let's see how to use tag and class. So what is the syntax for tag and class? So for syntax is tag name dot value of class. So for ID it was hash, but for using tag and class we have to use this full stop, or we can use this dot. So tag name, after we have to put dot, and then what is the value of class. So let's see for this username field what is exactly the class value. So I am just highlighting on username field. So tag name is input, and what is the class name? If you see, this is the class name, this is the class name, right? Now let's try to use this class name. So I am just copying it, and let's go to PyCharm by using tag and class. So command is driver dot find element by dot, we have to use CSS selector, after that comma, then what is the syntax? So syntax, what is the syntax here for tag name and class name? So tag name dot class name, right? So I will use tag name dot class name. So what is the tag name here? Input, after that dot, and what is the class name we have taken? So this is the class name which we found in HTML, right? So this is the class name, input underscore error, after that there is one space, and then form underscore input. Now we are passing value here. So let's pass some value, dot send keys. I am going to pass the same value, let's say my user. So now let's execute this command, execute this file, and let's check. It is launching the browser, it will open the page, and some error occurred, right? So if you see, it is not passing username, that means some error occurred. Now let's see what is that error. If you see the code, no such element, unable to locate element. So there is some problem due to which it is unable to locate element. So this is the class element which we have used, right? So this is the CSS selector which we used, that is tag name dot class name. But sometimes what happens is, so here the error was, for example, if you see the HTML code, in the class name there is a space. So whenever for class name there is a space in between, sometimes it might not work. Sometimes it may not work because of this space part. So in such situation, what we have to do is, we have to pass class name just before the space only. So we can simply pass up from input underscore error. So we can pass only this thing. After space, whatever is there, we should not pass. Now let's check. So I am just passing input underscore error. Because of the space, sometimes problem might occur. So we have to use the class without any space, that is input underscore error. So whatever before space is there, that we are going to use as a class name. So let's go to PyCharm now. In PyCharm, instead of this entire, I will just pass input, that is the tag name, dot, I will just pass only this value, input underscore error, as a class name. Now let's run this file. So when we are running this file now, so now it is passing correctly. That means it is locating correctly that CSS selector for username field. I am just closing this window. So this is working fine now. So we have to pass class name like this. In this situation also, tag name is not mandatory. So tag name we can skip, or we can simply write this statement like this. So I am just commenting this part. So what we can do is we can simply copy this. I am just pasting it again, and I can just avoid this tag name also. If I don't put the tag name, that is also fine, but dot we have to mention. So after dot we are putting the class name. What is the class value? That is the class value. And now let's again execute this file. So it is opening the Chrome browser instance. It will open our login page and it should pass my user, right? So it is passing correctly. So this is also fine. So we can use this approach, or we can simply skip the tag name and we can simply use dot class name. That is also fine, right? Now let's move to next combination. So we have seen tag name and ID. We have also seen tag name and class name. For tag name and class name, what is the syntax? We have to use tag name, after that dot and value of class. We can also skip tag name and we can simply put dot and value of class. That is also fine. Both are fine. The next combination is tag and attribute. So if you see in our HTML code, there are multiple attributes are present. So standard locators are like ID, name. These are the standard locators. But sometimes ID and names, like these attributes, will not be present for some of the specific elements. For example, in any complex pages, sometimes all attributes might not be present. So in such situation, we can use tag and any other attribute as well. So we can use tag name as well as any other attribute along with it. For example, let's take this username field. This is the code for this username field. For in this situation, let's say I want to use tag name. So what is the tag name? So if I want to use CSS selector by using tag name and attribute, we can use like this. So this is the syntax. We have to use tag name. So input is a tag name here. After that we can put square bracket. Inside this square bracket I can put any one attribute here. What is the attribute we can take? Let's say placeholder. So I can take placeholder attribute equals to, and what is the value of that placeholder? That is username. It is case sensitive, so use it carefully. So username that we can put as a value. So syntax will be driver dot find element by dot CSS selector, comma, after that we can put double quote, inside that input, that is the tag name, square bracket, and without any quotes we can put attribute, that is placeholder equals to username. Placeholder equals to value of that placeholder, that is username, and then we can pass any value which we want to pass. And again in this situation also, tag name is not mandatory, so we can like this statement like this also. Without writing tag name, we can simply put square bracket attribute equals to value. So this is the syntax for tag and attribute. Now let's go to PyCharm. So let's now write statement. So driver dot, so we are now going to see for tag and any other attribute other than standard locator. So we can use like this. So for that we can use tag and any attribute we can use. So always try to use some meaningful attribute which is not repeated in other elements as well, right? So for example, placeholder is username, that means that might not be repeated for other elements. So what is the command? Let's write driver dot find element by dot css selector, comma, and after that in double quotes we have to put the value. So let's go to our HTML code. So let's take this username field. So what is the tag name? Input is a tag name. So syntax is we have to use first tag name, that is input. After that we have to put value in square brackets. So what is the attribute value? So let's take one attribute value. So placeholder is an attribute, class is an attribute, type is an attribute, data-test is an attribute. We can take any attribute. So I am now taking placeholder attribute. So let's take placeholder attribute. Placeholder, then we have to put equals to, and without any double quote we have to put the value. So username, this is the value. So I am just copying it and I am just pasting that value here. So tag name, square bracket, attribute name equals to value of that attribute. So it should find our username field. Now let's pass send keys. So I am passing the value. Let's pass the value as my user. Now let's execute this file. So it is launching the browser. It is opening the web page and it is passing the value. So this is how we can use CSS selector by using tag name and any other attribute. We have to use square bracket, we have to use attribute name equals to value of attribute, and in this case also input tag, in any tag is not mandatory here. So it's fine if you like this line like this. So I'm just commenting this, and this time I can write it without tag name as well. So let's paste it here, driver dot find element. So I can just avoid this tag name. This is also perfectly fine. So directly in square bracket we are putting the attribute value and value for that attribute. So this is the placeholder is attribute, username is a value for that placeholder attribute. Let's run this file and let's check. So it is opening the browser and it is passing the value correctly. So that is also perfectly fine. So we can use any one of this approach. So what is the syntax for using CSS selector for tag and attribute is tag name, square bracket, attribute name equals to value of that attribute, or we can simply skip the tag name and we can use like this also. Now let's move to next combination, that is tag name, class name and attribute. So sometimes what happens is we have already seen tag name and class name, but sometimes what happens, I will show you practically. So let's take the example like this. Now we have username field and password field. We have two fields here. I want to pass password this time. I want to pass password. So let's try to use tag and class name. So I am just exploring this. So username, for username what is the tag name? Input. For username tag name is input. For password what is the tag name? For password also tag name is input. For password also tag name is input. For this field also tag name is input. So tag name is same for both the field. Now let's see the class name. So for username, if you see, for username, this is the username code. So for username, class name is, what is the class name? So this is the class name. And for password, again this is the class name. So class name is same, class name as well as tag name. Both the values are same for username and password field. So if you try to use, so let's try to use for password field tag and class name. So if you try to use tag and class name for password field, it will find the username first it will find the username first, because here if you try to find driver.find elements, then it will find both the field, because you are using driver.find elements, which will find the multiple elements. In this case, tag name and class name both are same. But if you use driver.find element, that will always capture only the first element which is found, that is username. So we will not be able to find the password by using tag name and class name alone. In such situation, we can use tag name, class name along with any other attribute as well. We can use CSS selector in this such fashion that we can use tag name, class name as well as other attribute. Now let's see the example. So how we can find that? So I can simply use, what is the syntax? So syntax is, first we have to write the tag name, after that value of class, tag name dot value of class. So in that situation, tag name is input. So in this situation, if you see, what is the tag name here? Tag name is input. For password field, tag name is input dot value of class. What is the class here? So this is the value of class. We can pass before space. So input underscore error, that is the value of class. And how to pass value of other attribute? We can simply use square bracket. Inside that we can use any one of the attributes. So what is the unique attribute here? If you see, we can either use placeholder or we can use data-test. So I have used data-test, which is the having value of password. So we can pass the attribute here, that is data-test equals to value of that attribute, that is password. So it will locate that element by using tag name, class name and data-test attribute. So like this, it will correctly capture the password field. Now let's see practically. So I am going to PyCharm. So this time we will see CSS selector by using tag name, class name and other attribute. So I am just writing the code. So let's use driver dot find element by dot CSS selector. After that we have to use comma and we have to pass value in double quotes. So what is the syntax? So first we have to use tag name. So what is the tag name for this password field? What is the tag name for this password field? It is input. So first let's pass input, that is the tag name, dot. For class name we have to use dot. So what is the class name? Class name is this one. So we don't have to consider the part after the space. So before the space is input underscore error. So that I am passing it as a class name. And now we are going to pass attribute. For that we have to use square bracket. What is the attribute we can take? So I am just taking, let's say this data-test attribute, which is having value as password. So I am just using this attribute without any double quotes equals to, what is the value? Without any double quote we have to put password. So this is the tag name dot class name, inside the square bracket attribute equals to value of that attribute. So it should capture our element, it should capture our password field. And which value we want to pass? Let's say send keys. I am just passing some dummy password, my password. I am just passing this my password as a value for password field. Now let's execute this file. So let's run this file. So it is launching the browser instance, opening the website, opening the login page, and it is passing the password field, right? So it is a password field, that's why it is hidden. It is not showing the characters, but it is passing the value correctly, right? So this is the how we can use tag name, class name and attribute. So sometimes couple of, so for example we have seen, right, for this username and password field, both are having the same tag name, both are having the same class name. So in such situation we have to use another attribute which is having the unique value specific to that field which you want to pass, right? So this is the example. Also in this case also, this tag name is not mandatory. Tag name we can skip as well. So we can write like this also. So tag name is not compulsory. So we can simply write this. So we can write like this. So for example, same line, driver.find element by.css selector. This is the tag name. So instead of tag name, we can avoid it. So we can simply write dot class name, attribute, and value. So this should also work. So this should also work like previously. So it will try to open the browser. It will pass the URL. It is opening the website and it is passing the password field. So that is also perfectly fine. So this is how we can use CSS selectors by multiple combinations. We have seen CSS selector by tag name, class name, and attribute. So every time we have to use some another syntax. So for tag name, class name, and attribute, we can use tag name dot value of class, and then in square bracket we have to use attribute equals to value of attribute. We have also seen tag and attribute. We can simply use tag name, in square bracket we can pass attribute name equals to value of attribute. We have also seen the tag and class, tag name dot value of class. We have seen CSS selector by using tag and ID also. In this situation, what is the syntax? Tag name hash value of ID. So this is how we have seen. And all these combinations, tag name is not mandatory. We can use or we cannot use. That totally depends on us. Our ultimate goal should be finding the locator correctly. So we can use standard locators as well. We can use custom locators as well. Depending upon the need and depending upon the situation of the HTML elements, we can use any of these locator. So far we have seen standard locators and custom locators. We have seen the CSS selector. In coming session we will see about XPath. That is also very important locator. We will see about XPath. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Kindly subscribe to my channel and share my channel so that the people who want to learn all these things can learn easily. Thank you everyone.